Man must be pleased, but him to please is woman's pleasure, wrote a poet called Coventry Patmore back in 1854 in a poem called Angel in the House. In this poem, what he tries to do amongst everything is to praise his wife and also talk about what a woman is supposed to do and how taking care of her husband and taking care of her children is not only the sole responsibility of her, but also it is something that makes her very, very happy and satisfied. So a woman's job is only to take care of the husband, the household, the children, and so on. Welcome to the third episode of Chai and Charcha, and in this video we'll be talking about trad wives. The trad wife words offshoots from a word called traditional wives, and I've seen a lot of content around it on the internet, especially in the Western front. So what we'll be doing in this video is we'll be talking about trad wives in India, the kind of content they are posting, what kind of categories can they be enlisted into, and also what are the difference between the trad wives in the West and trad wives in India. Before I begin this video, I like to say that I'm not a person who consumes that sort of content. So what I know about trad wives is purely on the basis of having gone through the rabbit hole of the internet while researching and writing the script of this video. And also the second point, that all the opinions, thoughts and feelings that you hear in this video are mine. I would credit everything that I've taken aid of in the description below. A lot of us know people who are traditional housewives, and that content has really bloomed in our spaces recently. This concept of trad wives is also an oppositional idea of what the current streams of feminism is. Somewhere or the other, the boom of the trad wife content in India especially can be traced back to the idea that a lot of women now are coming forward saying that they do not want to be in relationships, they want to spend their time with themselves, they're okay being by themselves, especially with the onset of the fourth wave of feminism, where women are saying that marriage seems like an idea which is used to control female bodies. They really don't want to have children, they don't see themselves having children because the economy doesn't afford it, because they want to be child free, along with the other ideas of male loneliness epidemic, which is in the verge of a breakout, where a lot of men talk about being lonely, being able to find people. I think it is a general concept where even on dating app people complain about they are not able to find anybody to date. The idea of trad wives and the idea of posting content where young women are talking about being married young is a very similar idea to that. So I think some of the differences that I find between the trad wives in India versus the trad wives abroad is, if you look in the US trad wives, one thing that I find very different about them versus in India is that there is a concept of going back to the land, going back to the religion, making everything from scratch. So these women say that they want to go back to the farm, eat their own meat, take care of the children traditionally, make their own bread, go back to churches. Whereas I feel in India it's a very class thing, that only certain women of certain class can afford to be housewife. In USA, the idea, and especially in the Western countries, the idea of trad wives is very religion based, coming from Christianity, where they say that, hey, maybe I want to go back to the religion, I want to go back to the traditional idea of what we were supposed to be, where I think in India it is based on who can afford to be a trad wife. I was going through the internet and I've basically found there are four kind of trad wives. One is the Dubai trad wives, right? So these are really rich people married to even richer people, and they're mostly concerned about how they splurge their husband's money, what is their day-to-day life look like, and it is a very luxury sort of a life. I think something very similar to that is the wives of Hollywood stars and Bollywood stars. I haven't seen a lot of their content, but what it seems like is all their lives they have been an accessory to their husband, enjoying on their lives and whatever that they were going through, having gone through their own things in the middle of it. These relationships feel more transactional than anything else. Like everything is a transaction, that if they give birth to a son, this is what they want. They want a villa, they want a house, they want certain bags, they want certain luxury items. So the whole life is based on is luxury front which they put out on the internet, and they're pretty obvious that they have married the sheikhs in Dubai, married rich because they wanted to marry rich, and in exchange they keep themselves groomed, they dress a certain way, they appease to their husband's style, poised as living the average girl's dream because they have everything that they want materialistically and they seem happy about it. There is no idea of pretense when it comes to this. They are pretty clear about what they want. So it's a very clear transactional dynamics. Other thing is the kind of wives of very famous celebrities that we see. I feel as if there's also a very transactional relationship as to why they have stayed in those relationships. Another category of women that I find online are the young wives, people who have chosen to marry at the age of 20, 21, 22, and these women are probably documented experiences of having married very young, and they assert on the idea that, hey, I've chosen this life and I wanted to live this life, and that is why I'm in it. Nobody has forced me to do anything. And these women are very pretty and they dress very well. They vlog their content, how they wake up, how they behave. And one thing which I find very interesting about these videos is that these women are not exactly cooking or cleaning. I mean, they partake in these activities. They make chai, they make things for their husband because they like to, and they enjoy cooking for their husband. But cooking and cleaning is not primary work of them, and they have outsourced it via a family member or via domestic help that they employ in their house. Also, what is very interesting about these people is that these women say ki, oh, feminists do not want them to work, which is a very weird idea, because it is because of feminism that they were able to make a choice of wanting to either work or to stay at home. And these contents are very revolved around being a housewife, around the idea of that, hey, I'm in this marriage and I've chosen this marriage and I'm very happily involved with my husband. I think third category is interesting, and it is the category of women who are older women who have joined social media and are plainly enjoying social media for the front of it, and they put their children into it, they put their husbands into it, and they're not in the early stages of marriage, but these are mostly related to the family content, or women in their early 40s and early 50s who are going to kitty parties and showing it. It is not serious content. Another offshoot of this category could be the people who are not living in metropolitan city but are able to document experiences via social media and also make a livelihood out of it, and they are able to not only access a better lifestyle because of social media, but they're also able to make money out of it. The fourth kind, and one of my favorite kind, is the ones who are the older women, but they're talking about the real problems of housewife, which I feel is the most realistic one out of the lot, where they're not only talking about the problems that they face. I saw this video where this woman is talking about how she has sat down to eat, but she turns around and she looks at her kitchen, and the kitchen is messy. She pushes her plate back and she cleans the whole house, and she says that, oh, I really do not even have 2 seconds for myself. I think another video which went viral recently and which I loved very much is of these 2 women who are sitting next to a woman in the middle, and probably it's their daughter, and interviewing these 2 women, and they're talking about how they never wanted to really get married and they never really wanted to have kids, how they had their best times when the children were away from them. And then she asked them, but what about the time when you had the children, right? So she first asked, oh, what was your best time in your lives? And they said that, oh, when my children went to college. And she laughs and she says, but what about now? What about the time when you had your children? What was the best time that you had with them? And these women assert that of course they love their children and they want nothing but the best for their children, but they really didn't want to have children, right? So they talk about the complexities and the realities of their life, where I think the first 2 categories are yet to experience. What I find very interesting about the trad wife concept in India is that only a certain class, it is mostly people who can afford to outsource their help to other people. What they don't understand is, while they choose not to work because they can choose not to work, a lot of people are forced into working because they really don't have any other options. So I feel as if the trad wives in India is very limited to a certain class, because if you clearly look into it, हमारा इतिहास इस बात का गवाह है कि हमारे यहाँ पे जो दलित, बहुजन और आदिवासी औरतें हैं वो हमेशा से ही काम करती आई हैं. The idea of having to work and going to work has been a very upper class idea, where upper class women had the luxury to choose. What I'm trying to say, and the point that I'm trying to bring back home, is the idea of who gets to not work and who gets to be a trad wife in India is also a form of privilege, because not everybody has a choice, especially in the Indian subcontinent. People from Dalit, Bahujan and Adivasi communities have always worked. Their women have always worked in the field, and even if you talk to your domestic helps, they work in 4-5 houses, they go back home and they do all the chores of the house. So while trad wives as a concept has bloomed in India, it has only been blooming in certain classes and castes in our country. One thing which I also find very interesting and I'd like to talk about about is the fetishization of women. I see a lot of men talking about how, oh, this is the last generation of innocent women and this is the last generation of innocent mums. But what they don't understand is these women are innocent because they never had a choice. Had they had the kind of education that we have access to now, especially in metropolitan city, if not villages, women would have the right to choose. They would be able to think. Innocence is a depravity because they do not have the resources, the tools, the kind of material that would be required to think, to be able to make choices. What people don't understand is that these women were married off very young and they really didn't have a choice, and they were from a very young age taught that they had to be good wives, they had to bear children, and they had to keep their husband happy. So innocence is basically the lack of resources, and it shouldn't actually be celebrated as it is celebrated. Another thing which I find very interesting is the idea of changing names. So while a lot of people say no, marriage is a sacred ritual and that everybody should experience marriage, everybody should experience childbirth, what is very interesting about the idea is that I know a lot of people whose names were changed after they were married. So their assertion was not only on changing the last name but also the first name. I know friends whose grandmothers, not only the surname but also the names were changed after marriage because that was the ritual back in the day. If anybody is familiar with Louis Carroll in Alice in the Wonderland, where he talks about how naming is also an idea similar to taking ownership of something. So when you name something, you kind of take ownership of it, like in Genesis, get how Adam kind of names all the creatures in the world. So if you look at the hierarchy, man is above all the other categories because he kind of also names them. And the ownership is also very familiar to the idea in India, where even today marital rape is still legal. So there was this case where this woman went to the court and said that, hey, I'm not happy with my husband, he beats me and I don't like to be with him. But judge of the court said that if you're not wearing a sindoor, if you're not wearing a mangal sutra, how are you supposed to appease your husband? Court gave the woman the order to wear the mangal sutra and wear the sindoor and go back to the husband who was domestically abusing them. My point of bringing this is the idea that culturally, historically, emotionally, socially, and married women are thought to be the bodies of their husband. It is thought of as a sanctioning of a man's access to his wife, and he is legally bound to do whatever that he may please with her. One thing I like to also talk about is the unpaid labor aspect of it. So in our economy, money is everything, right? But that's one work that does not really account for any money, and they've spent all their lives looking after their children and their husbands, and now that they're finally out of their house, they struggle to make sense of their identity. It is also very prominent to look at how this sort of labor is not accounted for. So there's no money, there's no transactional thing to it. It's just basically an idea of romanticizing free labor. I think what trad wives in general do is that they romanticize the idea of unpaid labor. So there's no transactionality to it. There's no transactionality of a woman who's cooking for her husband and children. But what is very harrowing about the whole deal is that in 15, 18, 19, 20 years in time, when the children leave their nest, and because the woman had been always cooking, cleaning and burning away her future in front of a stove, she would not only have nothing to do, but she would also struggle to make sense of herself because all her life she has just focused on her children. I know a lot of people will now argue that, hey, men have been working all their lives and nobody talks about them, but that is what patriarchy does to you. It sanctions into this pure general role which doesn't have to be. I think one thing which is also very interesting about the whole trad wife concept is the idea that they reinforce the traditional idea of what beauty is. So for example, you want to be a trad wife, you would have to have something to give in return of the protection, the money, the culture that would come along with it. So for example, if you look at the trad wives, whether it's Dubai trad wives or whether it's the upper class trad wives in India, they look a certain way, they dress a certain way, they assert the traditional idea of what is beauty, whether it's thin and fair or whatever that is conventionally thought of as attractive. In this video, I'm not arguing that being a trad wife is not alright, but I'm saying when that becomes your only personality and that is only who you are and what you do, it can be very problematic, and it can be testified by people the generation above us who are, I think, probably struggling more than we can ever imagine. All I'm trying to say is that trad wives as a concept is not wrong as long as it's a choice that people are willingly making. There's no harm in being housewives. Nobody's saying that you shouldn't be a housewife, but it's a choice that you should consciously make. It should not be forced upon you. I hope you like this video. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.